Hello, it's Steve. When you're working on a game prototype, are you met with this crap? You, buddy. What am I looking at here? Well, I've had enough. Through a series of undocumented misadventures, I've developed the B.A.D framework. That's right, in this video, with just a little bit of effort, we're going to go from this boring prototype to something truly inspirational. Sparkly sound effects. Sparkly sound effects. Sparkly sound effects. Sparkly sound effects. I'm not going to go into too much detail on the mechanics here because look at it. It's asteroids. It's not asteroids. This is the only time I'll comment on the irony of using sprites as an example in an asteroids clone, given the history of that. Okay, so here we have a basic asteroids clone. Let's make it bad. What is the goal of a prototype? It should be a simple, rough concept of a gameplay loop or mechanic. I think simple is the key word in that sentence. There's some sort of quote about art with limits being good and wonderful that I don't remember off the top of my head, but that.
Da Vinci?
Not to say we're trying to make art with our prototype, but we are kind of trying to make art with our prototype. Let's start with a window. I'm going to open up this project settings here. And we're going to do a couple of things. I really like the aspect ratio of the Game Boy Advance. And that was 240 by 160 pixels. So we're going to do that for our window size. And because that I just already know is going to be tiny on a modern display, we're going to triple it just like that. And now we can scroll down and hit the various settings required to make this all cool and pixely. And yes, I'm doing GBA because I'm old, but not that old. Alright, what does that look like? Hey, look at that. It's all little jaggy, not as jaggy as I like, but it's got the dancing pixels. So next up, to get these pixels dancing even harder, let's tackle the sprites. Like, what are these? Hand-drawn? Yes, as a matter of fact, they were hand-drawn with my mouse. Am I a sprite artist? No. And even if I was, in the prototype phase, would I really even know what the sprites are supposed to look like? Alright. Instead of these, I'm going to override this with a polygon 2D. Now for the simple ship, whop, 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 whop. And for the little guy, the blast, bloop, 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 bloop. And the asteroids are going to be slightly more of a change because I was doing an Atlas texture for these, but instead I'm just going to do 3 polygon 2Ds. Look at them. Look at them go. All right, back to the gameplay. Here's the main reason I like this setup. Look at those jaggies. They really, to me, make the game feel more physical, like it exists in our world and isn't just some abstract concept. Let's keep trucking here. This text is ugly. It's an unwritten rule of game engines that the default font needs to be awful. And of course it's made way worse by our chosen pixel count. So I'm just going to go ahead and grab this. Google has a whole list of these. You can just grab one. Pick your own if you don't like this one. I like this one for this particular art style. I'm fairly certain it's pretty overused at this point, but I personally don't care. I love it. So it's going in. Much better. Now, obviously, this would be much easier to show off if there was actually any text in the prototype, but I didn't decide to put any text in the prototype, so you're just going to have to look at this beautiful menu screen and how much better it is. You'll have to wait until our surprise reveal at the end to see this font truly shine. Finally, this is really lacking some color. I think colors are pretty wonderful, but I may never actually know color theory, whatever that is. So I'm going to go ahead and pull up low spec here. A wonderful resource for limited color palettes, in my opinion. Great for prototypes. I don't know what the requirements are for licensing or whatever. I think they're all free. For the sake of this video, I'm going to say thank you to Solitaire for their plant palette. I think that'll work just fine for what we've got going on here. And I'm just going to snap my fingers. Boom. Look at that. We got beautiful color. Don't forget the environment clear color. I'll show you what this looks like. It's over here. Or the theme colors for text. Those are pretty important too, depending on your game. And of course, the sprites are really easy because they're just polygons. You just change their color. Now, I think you'll agree that even if this aesthetic in particular does not speak to you, it's cohesive. There are some other things that, depending on the game you're making or your own tastes, I might also do, like setting up different world or camera environments based on the engine, different ways to do that, stuff like vignette effects. Are they overdone? Sure, but they add a little bit of visual polish so that I can turn my brain off of thinking about this as work, and I can actually enjoy looking at my prototype as new features are added and things like that. Also, I really like title screens in my prototypes. That's mostly because of the way I like to use scene managers in Godot, but for some reason they help me think through the game loop a little bit easier, especially if I decide to turn my prototype into a small game. Now, obviously, there's a whole discussion on whether you should just throw out your prototype, and I think generally speaking you probably should. That's neither here nor there. What did we actually accomplish here? What's the point of making our prototypes pretty? One key part for me is that lower space for complexity leads directly to lower complexity. This is a good way to check my assumptions, as I am a solo developer. I have very limited time to make resources, let alone code and scenes and freaking complicated inventory systems. So this is a good check to see, is this concept actually simple? Or did it just seem simple in your brain? And hey, this lower space for complexity doesn't just mean screen space. It's also the color palette. Having a limited color palette means you have to depend a little bit more on shape and position on the screen to depict different things. You'll run out of space, color space, and physical space really quickly with these sort of constraints. And in my opinion, having a consistent starting point and style is great for my own creativity. It means I can go in wild different directions with a firm base of design principles. And that's actually the same thing with code, and I'll probably get into that in another video. I just think it sparks joy. Ultimately, at the end of the day, it just sparks joy. Anyway, I hope this was useful to you. As a special treat, here, look at this other game, Mysterious prototype that I made that uses some of these very similar approach to make a weird little dungeon crawler. That's called Frankie Four Hands, and I have a prototype for that on itch.io right now. In fact, I recently exported the web version. Still deciding what to do with this particular prototype. I'll probably make a couple of devlogs about it to cover some of the cool dev side stuff that I was working on in this, and my journey back from B.A.D to Godot. Hopefully this was entertaining and helpful in some way, even if this particular style doesn't spark joy for you the way it does for me. Do you have any visual routines that you follow at the beginning of a prototype? Is there a sort of visual thing you follow in your projects? Let me know. I'll be back on a weekly basis unless I die. Peace.